The desert holds an ancient secret, a secret guarded for centuries. But secrets can't be kept forever. A mountain in a forbidden land, shrouded in mystery. Many have searched for it, few have seen it, becomes burning truth. Mountain of Fire. The precise location of Mount Sinai has eluded both archaeologists and theologians for centuries. It is the mountain of legend, chronicled in the Old Testament book of Exodus. The mountain where Moses saw the glory of the God of the Hebrews, where he fell to his knees in fear before a burning bush, and where he received the stone tablets containing holy law etched by the finger of God. Tradition has placed this fabled mountain squarely in the middle of the Egyptian Sinai Peninsula. But amazingly, the findings of another unique pair of explorers provide even more compelling evidence and credibility. Working for an American oil company based in Saudi Arabia, the Caldwells are subject to company policy imposed by the Saudi government that all foreigners leave the country for at least 24 days of the year. In the aftermath of the Gulf War, Jim and Penny's travel options are limited, so a trip to the west, toward Egypt, becomes a clear option. St. Catherine's is first on their list of sites to visit.
Yeah, it took everything out of me when we got there to see that it just didn't match the biblical description. I was so disappointed.
Deciding to leave St. Catherine's, the Caldwells continue their journey through Egypt, where a brief stop in a roadside bookstore reveals a surprise in the form of a book called The Gold Mines of Midian.
We began to look at it. It was written by Sir Richard Burton in the 1800s. He was an explorer of vast amounts of the former Ottoman Empire, including Arabia. And he had drawn a map in the back, and as we pulled that map out, that map had a beautiful rendition of the Gulf of Suez and the Gulf of Aqaba, Sinai Peninsula, but it also had just a little portion of this northwestern quadrant of Arabia, and it listed that land as Madyan. He's saying Midian's over there, and if you can find Midian, you can find the region where Mount Sinai was, because that's where Moses was supposedly tending the flocks of Jethro.
Well, we found another book in the bookstore called The Mountain of God. This was by Emmanuel Anati. He also mentions Jebel al-Lawz as being a potential site.
The Caldwells pack up and head for Saudi Arabia and begin to search for the highest mountain in Midian. Though free to travel through Saudi Arabia on work visas, no permission has been granted to enter the government-imposed forbidden zone around Jebel al-Lawz.
The mountain peaks seemed extraordinarily high to me, and even the very top of Jebel al-Lawz was even enshrouded in cloud from time to time. That's how high it appeared, and that was my first reaction that, gosh, this is so much different than the picture that came to my mind in St. Catherine's, the traditional site of Mount Sinai.
We're at the 4,000 foot level. These mountains are way up there, another 4,000, 5,000 feet above us.
The altar with petroglyphs is their first discovery.
We came around the front side of that and didn't really see anything, but as you go around to the back side, the cows started becoming very visible.
My daughter was there, and she says, "Dad,
there's 12 cows."
Okay, good.
And she was only like 8 years old at the time. Moses asks Aaron, "I've come down the mountain, what on earth has happened here?" And Aaron says, "I took the ornaments from them, I took their gold, and I put it into the fire, and out popped this calf." But he makes it very plain that there was a single calf. I built the altar, I put it on the altar, and I turned to the people and I said, "These be thy gods," plural, "O Israel, which have led thee up out of the land of Egypt." Something struck me very strange about that, because if you put one golden calf atop an altar, why would you say, "These be thy gods, O Israel," if you've got one golden calf? Did he make more than one golden calf? You know, it puzzled me for a good length of time. In studying some of the Hebrew, it says that Aaron fashioned the calf with a graving tool. It literally says to engrave, as in something we would engrave a name on today. that sounds very strange because you mold something that's molten. You don't engrave it. But the way you built an altar in Egypt was to, in relief, cover it with gods, and then put a chief deity, a statue of the chief deity, on it. If a golden calf were to have been put on the top, that scripture would not contradict itself. It would absolutely perfectly fit. And he would have placed it atop and said, in fact, "These be thy gods, O Israel, which have led thee up out of the land of Egypt."
When you go there, you can read the Bible like a map. And it says, this is here, then you go forward 10 steps, and this is here. For lots of people our age, you have to smack them in the face for them to believe something.
Most of today's generation doesn't want to accept things that they can't see and touch and feel. You know, when you show them something like the Bible and what it says, you know, this isn't just a story that somebody's trying to teach you in Sunday school. This is something real, and here's the proof.
With a bow, too. Looks like a person with a bow and arrow.
Where's the bow and arrow?
Y'all move so I can get a clear shot of it.
It's hard not to believe.
The top of Sinai is very black, darkened rock. It has a appearance of, in some light, coal.
It's extremely interesting because the closer you get up toward the blackened peak, you can see where the red granite folds down and the black begins. And it's a dividing line that is like night and day.
In some light, it actually has a blue tinge to it. And one of the verses in Scripture talks about the top of the mountain as if it were a sapphire stone.
From high atop the mountain, Jim and Penny see the V-shaped altar of sacrifice.
The altar of sacrifice is what inspired us to continue to go back to the mountain. This is where the pillars are. And it says in chapter 24 of Exodus that Moses got up early, he erected 12 pillars, he built an altar there at the base of the mountain, and then he brings oxen in for sacrifice.
Recent excavations show evidence of ancient ash deep in the soil at this site.
From that moment forward, it was my mission, Penny and I together and the kids, we were going to document everything we could about it, because our greatest fear was that once the Saudis realized exactly what they may have, they would come in with bulldozers and eliminate it.
Jim Caldwell is able to explore the cave that Bob and Larry could only see from a distance.
It is dead front of the mountain. It was a lot higher than I thought it was. The entrance looks small. It's 15 feet high. It's a big cave. I was able to climb into it. It's about 20 feet deep. There is a place for somebody to bed down in the back of it. One of the things I did is when I was walking to the back of it, I swung around with my video camera, and the view was awe-inspiring. You could see the golden calf altar, the plain where the thousands of tents would have been located out there.
The Caldwells will visit the mountain a total of 14 times over a period of 8 years, camping in different locations each time to increase their chances of finding more archaeological sites. Their confidence that Jebel al-Oz is the real Mount Sinai begins to deepen as they find several more distinctive, though puzzling items around the mountain. Amazing because of its rarity, a lone cedar tree comes into view. The trunk of this enormous tree is 8 feet wide and clearly shows its age. Even smaller olive trees in Israel have been dated at more than 2,000 years old. Exodus chapter 3 records that God spoke to Moses in the form of a burning bush. Jim and Penny can't help but wonder, could this be the very plant? The Caldwells also find numerous almond trees around the mountain, significant because of how they lend credibility to the account of Aaron's rod made of almond wood, which budded and produced ripe almonds, according to Numbers 17:8. Additionally, quail can be seen all over the area. It is theorized that they fly in huge numbers over the Red Sea from Egypt, only to fall to the ground exhausted on the Arabian side. Exodus 16:13 records that in the evening, quail covered the camp of the Israelites. Jim and Penny also find grinding stones, spear points, and other sorts of weapons, all fashioned in the Egyptian style, which the Israelites would have learned during their 400 years of slavery in Egypt. But the most compelling of their discoveries is also the most mysterious.
And we came up to a break in the rocks, and I looked over from the north looking due south, and both of us were just stunned. There 2 miles away was a monolith that just stood out in the landscape.
In that valley, there are numerous natural outcroppings of hills that are just comprised of boulders. And then there is this one with this massive rock sitting atop of it.
From a distance, it's big. When you're close to it, it is enormous. It's 4 stories tall. And I've often said that the miracle that would have happened there probably rivaled or surpassed the crossing of the Red Sea.
The Exodus account says that the people of Israel grumbled against Moses, saying, "Why did you bring us up out of Egypt to make us and our children and livestock die of thirst?"
I climbed up the backside to the very base of this rock, and right at the base of that split, it's deeply gouged, and the rock on either side, if you look straight up from the inside of that rock, it's really, really smooth, but it's pressure flaked. Big chunks of granite have been flaked from the bottom. And it's not a normal erosive pattern for granite. Granite generally from just wind and erosion will crack and flake
Top
off
down.
from the top down. This is coming up as though something came flying up and really gouged the rock. When that rock was split in two, a geyser erupted out of the top of it. It blew those 2 pieces of that rock apart. Now you're talking about anywhere from 600,000 to estimates of up to 2 million people that came out of Egypt. If we were talking about a tiny little rock with a tiny little trickle, they would still be in line waiting to get a sip of that water. This place would have filled with water so quickly that that entire group of people could have come around the edges of this 2 or 3 mile long area and immediately taken their fill of water.
It's very
The most graphic description would be found in Psalms. Thou didst cleave the rock in the wilderness, and the waters ran down as rivers. And that Hebrew word for clave means to split cleanly in two. There is no such candidate for any other site that has been investigated or is currently being investigated as Mount Sinai. I guess one of the most intriguing things is, in an area that is close to the split rock, there are footprints that have been carved all over the rocks. When you pair that up with the scripture in Deuteronomy where Moses says to the children of Israel, you're now about to go in and possess the land, and wherever you place the soles of your feet, God will give you the land. Now that's a very interesting thing, because if you are a wandering people, how would you mark out places that you had been? If the title deed to your land is wherever you place the soles of your feet, isn't it interesting that there are so many little feet? It's very compelling.
To go to the traditional Mount Sinai, what you find there is a circus event, a monastery built on top of what would have been a holy site, Egyptians selling their wares. It's comical, actually, a mountain that doesn't fit the biblical description.
That's where you have to believe a little bit, but because you can prove that something is true in there, lends credibility to the document.
And what so impresses me about this site is the way it is preserved. It's perfectly preserved in time.
When you go there, you can read the Bible like a map.